I'd like to welcome everyone to our second Rinsed Connect event. We're here in Jacksonville, Florida. I think the consensus is that it's a little bit colder than we were all hoping. Wearing jackets off the plane, hoping for mid-80s. Other than that, we're really grateful to be here with everyone. My name is Sam Pittenger. I am the Chief Revenue Officer at Rinsed. It's a true pleasure to have some new friends with me tonight. Shannon Kessell, which is the Chief Marketing Officer at Mint Eco, high-growth car wash chain here in Florida, local. Thanks for making a quick road trip up north.
Of course. Happy to be here.
And we've got what's perhaps the best name in car wash, Henry Schein. The Chief Financial Officer at Whitewater Express. Whitewater is one of the fastest growing, one of the largest car wash groups in the country. So we were very fortunate tonight to learn from Shannon and Henry. The format tonight, we're really here to learn about how to build a profitable playbook for your car wash. A lot of us would love to know, just right off the bat, how'd you get into car wash? How long have you been in it? And what's something you love about the car wash space? Shannon, we'll start with you.
Ladies first.
You're up.
I just hit 2 years in car wash. So January of 2022, I ran into our CEO, our co-founder. He was looking for a marketer to help come grow the company. So as employee, we joke 3.5 since we had a part-time bookkeeper, and have helped us grow to, we have 7 coming soon. 4 open and 1 opening in May. So building our portfolio, and something I love about car wash, I think that it is a land of opportunity. There's not many industries left like this for marketers to come in and really leave their fingerprints all over things and really help bring it into the 21st century, which is, I know, something that Rinsed can probably appreciate as well. So that's been really fun to use it as a playground, honestly.
Henry Schein. I have been in the car wash industry for about 5 years now. I am a recovering financial professional. And what really interested me about it was an opportunity to get involved in something that was growing. You could really impact your teammates and employees' lives by creating more growth opportunities for them through both acquiring and building new locations. And I got an opportunity to do something I'd never done before, which is actually be part of building a business. And the best part is we can clean all those fingerprints off of the cars that you guys are putting your marketing fingerprints all over. Yep.
Fantastic, thank you. Shannon, you have some really unique background. You've worked in a lot of different industries. What have you found to be unique about the car wash space when it comes to marketing?
Unique. So my background, for context, is I've been in healthcare, I've been in retail, I've been in B2B, B2C. My most recent experiences were in franchising. So I think that for me, there's actually a lot of similarities between the franchise space and obviously multi-location, growing the company from 0 locations to almost 12 now. Just the lack of consolidation in brand, I think, was something that stood out to me. A lot of opportunity there to really create something that is unique for consumers. And so that's what we've worked really hard on in our business. So that's been a huge focus for us.
And Henry, you're kind of nodding your head there. When you take all the car wash groups in the country, Whitewater is really one of the groups that has just done this so well, consolidating and building a brand. Any thoughts there on what Shannon mentioned?
Yeah, so one of the biggest initiatives that Whitewater took from founding, we had built 4 locations through a 3-year period and then started acquiring other car washes. And we kind of had 2 options. We could either keep another brand in another market where we acquired and run it as 2 separate brands, but under one company, or make them all Whitewater, one brand, kind of one company, one motto. And although it was difficult to do that, and it took us months to do so with the first acquisition, it paid off because it created a better culture for the entire group. And also we started to build that brand recognition faster. And it's just a lot easier to say, hey, I'm in Lexington, Kentucky working at the Lexington West store, and I've got a buddy down in Tomball, Texas working at the first Whitewater, and we all have the same logo on our shirt. Whereas saying, I work for Johnny's Car Wash and he works for Jimmy's Car Wash, but we get paid by the same people is just kind of a different cultural setup. Doesn't matter that much to the consumer right now. I don't know yet, but when you start to get multiple locations in a market, you certainly need to keep the same brand so people recognize you for your service and your quality, et cetera.
You mentioned something interesting. I think a lot of car wash groups would approach that from the consumer perspective. We need to build a brand, but you mentioned the importance of a lot of this is employee facing. We're all we're all rowing together. We're all behind the same business, and so that makes total sense. Both of you are part of high growth companies. Shannon, just 2 years ago, you guys started with just one site. Now you have a roadmap ahead of you. Henry, you joined about 4 years ago. You've gone from 10 to over 100. What have you learned about opening a new site?
The first thing is it's not like a can of Pringles. You can't just pop it open and you're good to start eating. By the way, we had some success with early on in our time at Whitewater because we had built car washes in places where people had never seen the express model before. So we didn't have to do a lot. It was really just word of mouth, and the on-the-ground marketing is typically what people see first when they think of going to a car wash. But over the last couple of years, and frankly, a lot of this we've learned from other people in the industry and people that we've acquired, you got to take some pretty aggressive strategies to make sure, one, that you're ready in terms of preparedness with the staff, the location, the facilities, the IT, and all those teams that have to come together. But more so, you've got to have a plan to get the site to a certain amount of revenue in a short amount of time. So that way you can ensure the profitability of it, because when you're opening up multiple locations in a year, taking the risk that, hey, one site might take 12 months to become profitable and one might take 3 is not a good plan for a high growth business.
So we have some unique experience of, well, you guys also had this with buying, rebranding, opening it back up. And I think that our first 3 sites, it was really easy because we were just so much better and different than anyone else in our market. And also there wasn't as much competition. So we did not have grand openings at our original 3 locations. Flung the doors open, people found us. It was wonderful. They were wowed. They also had some existing customer base. I think when people are used to going to a car wash on that corner for 20 years, makes a huge difference. So our first greenfield last year, do you see my bruises and my scarf? So I think that we learned a lot. We're using it as a learning experience of, honestly, we learned a lot on the marketing side, but learned a lot more on the construction side. It is really tough to build car washes in Florida in the middle of the rainy season. We actually moved our grand opening date multiple times, which was really tough from a marketing perspective. And then we ended up, kind of up against a wall. And so I think that it made things more stressful than it needed to be, because there's a really close relationship between operations and marketing. And, hiring for us 40 people, keeping them on payroll for 2 months before we opened, that was painful. So we learned a lot. And I think that from a marketing perspective, we actually had a really great grand opening. I would say that we learned that there's a few things that we won't spend money on again, but our decision was to throw the kitchen sink at it and see, we're going to do a higher budget for this and we're going to try everything and then measure what worked best. So that way we have our roadmap for opening 7 in the next year and a half, because that's, we want to really be able to hone in on the strategy. And so signage, and then add more signage and a person spinning a sign. That's going to be just absolutely, if you only have one thing to spend it on signage. But then we've done a lot with digital marketing and other tactics that we can talk more about.
So it sounded like the number one driver of success for a new site is just getting awareness out, getting traffic into the driveway. And it sounds like signage is the simplest way to do that.
Most obvious, for sure.
Yeah, I would say one little thing about it. So it's the driver of probably the marketing team's success. But if the execution isn't there after that initial couple weeks, it doesn't really matter, because then you're going to lose the customers. And they're not going to come back to try you again if you didn't give them a great car wash and great customer service. So we can bring in as many people as we want, but we've got to deliver a clean, dry, shiny car, and then follow up with them after to make sure that they're going to come back and hopefully become a member.
A lot of that goes into, you had employees on payroll for 2 months before. A lot of it's training. It's ensuring that when these people come, they have an amazing experience. So like Henry mentioned, they're coming back.
Yes, and I will tell you that, we did get the training right on this, so we had plenty of time to do it. Our seminar was fantastic. I mean, we had 500 Google reviews in the first 60 days that were just 5 stars. I mean, our rating is still 5 stars 6 months later. So it's something that we haven't seen. And people were just using, your customer gets it when they start using your vocabulary in the review, which is really cool. So for us, that was kind of our way of auditing the training experience. So that's actually something that we're probably not going to change much for our next adventure.
Yeah. What's the difference then? We've mentioned some things you look for. What's the difference between a good grand opening and a great one? Is it just in the numbers?
I'll go.
You would probably say yes for sure.
No, but I mean, part of it is like, you hired people for 2 months prior. You probably would have liked to hire them maybe 1 month prior and train them for 30 days. So the upcoming execution to the grand opening really matters a lot because like every business, people have a limited amount of time that they can work on a project or on the things they're responsible for every day. So if you've got, even if you guys probably had 3 locations at the time and then you're building a 4th. So if everybody's focused on number 4 and they're focused on it for 4 or 5 months beforehand, that's going to hurt 1 through 3. And so I think the first part of it is the upcoming execution. The last 8 weeks before the car wash opens, do you have your facilities team on site making sure that all the equipment works? Are your contractors done with what they need to do? And you're just running the equipment and testing it and making sure that we're ready to go all the while operations is preparing. And then the marketing side of it, you've got a pretty firm date to where you can say, hey, we're going to open on this day and then we're going to run free car washes on this week or whatever it may be, or we're going to send this mailer out in this time. All of that has to kind of tie together, and the closer it does tie together, the less time people spend trying to fix things. I would say the great grand opening is where the rest of your business doesn't suffer because all the attention was on one grand opening. The ultimate result is most likely, a very high member count, very high revenue, 2-3 months in, and you've retained a lot of your staff because they've had success in that grand opening.
A lot of owners may put all this work into opening on a certain day. They're finishing sweeping right before things open. You would rather get things prepared a month or 2 in advance and wait to open until you feel like the business is truly ready to sustain that opening, employees are properly trained, instead of just trying to open the doors.
Absolutely. I mean, we've encountered situations with maybe people that we've worked with external from the business or even in our own business where everybody was rushing just to get open because they were worried about the dollar that we were spending on who knew what it was, electricity or payroll or whatever it may be. And then the first 5 days we were putting out a car with soap all over the back. And that's a terrible way to start the livelihood of that car wash. So I think being patient and saying that, you are truly ready and your staff is ready and your odds of success are going to be high for the next couple months here is the most important thing.
Thanks for sharing. Let's move on to a new topic, data and performance. The car wash industry is chock full of data. And it can be overwhelming at times for a lot of car wash owners and businesses. What are some metrics that car washes maybe aren't tracking today, but they should?
There's a lot on the marketing side. And I think that part of the problem that we have is probably information overload. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily that we're not tracking, I think we're tracking everything. So it's really narrowing in on what is going to be the key piece of data to help drive the business forward in the future. Some ideas just from the past 2 years we came in, had to build everything from scratch and really wrangle our data. So I've been really involved in that process. Things that I don't think people are paying attention to. Rinse has been really helpful. I will tell you, we had no insight into certain metrics like lifetime value of the club and, dollar per car average, just basic things that you really need to drive your business. And so that's been helpful to compare to what we calculate ourselves as a team. But I love looking at things like website traffic and our performance data from our agency partners and overlaying that onto volume data and revenue data because it tells a fuller picture of what's working and what's not. Especially when you're deploying tactics that are really hard to track, such as radio campaigns or billboard campaigns, that's infinitely frustrating to our finance team is what did this get us? And so for me, I'm always trying to find new ways to track things, new ways to really attribute our dollars so that way we can spend them in a smarter way. So I would encourage owners to really understand where are my leads coming from and then how do I almost put a bug tracker on them. You're never going to get 100%, but what's the best way that I can start to track these initiatives?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Although you'll never be able to say, we actually tried to mention this at a car wash from a billboard, and I think 5 people mentioned it because that one doesn't work. So you guys can throw that one out. But I mentioned that because all you need to do is draw shapes in the fog and say okay, these things seem to work, especially when we put more money behind them. And then you start to form a marketing strategy. And as long as you can point to this was better than everything else that we did, that makes sense from a return on investment perspective. So it's, I guess, being able to take volume and membership growth and tie that to some things that you're doing offsite. Honestly, on the onsite part, it's making sure that the number of things that you're communicating with the team about is actually very simple, because with the number of vehicles that we're washing on a daily basis, like the managers of these locations and the people who might be a little bit lower level, they don't think about 20 different KPIs. They think about, what was my conversion rate that day? How many cars am I washing per hour so I can manage my labor? And I think the next place for them to go is, what was my wash mix? So really trying to impact the amount of washes that we're selling that are above the basic level, and trying to improve that average, because the marginal profit on those is very high. And that's an opportunity for the industry.
Yeah, we've been digging a lot more into churn lately, and because we've done a really good job of focusing on the top of the bucket and the water going into the bucket, but then there's just a constant hole dripping out of the bucket. And so if the sales team's really good up here, how can we as marketers, really start to plug that hole on the bottom through using tools like CRM and, lifetime of the value calculations. And if we just send them this offer here, we can keep them this much longer, and those kinds of, not manipulations, but strategy, frankly, of just trying to move the needle where we can.
Thank you. Yeah. With all these KPIs and metrics and data floating around, do you feel like some car wash owners may be attaching themselves to KPIs that are misleading or that are not helpful in the business?
Yes, I'm sure. I think, like I said before, information overload is really tough. I think that the easy number is, if we can just get to this many clubs, all our woes go away. And so I think that we've been really focused on a specific, club number per location by a certain time period. But we've since, that's still very important, but we've been looking a lot more on the other half of the coin more recently of, okay, well, what labor did it take to get there? And, we have a lot of ancillary services that we are selling. And so what if we are able to get to the number that we need with less clubs with using other services and just improving our mix and things like that? So I think that we've gotten smarter of not just putting all of our eggs in the club number basket.
Yep.
But there's more to the story.
I think if a car wash owner is placing all their emphasis on net new membership signups and not looking at the bottom of the bucket, who's leaving, what's our total member count, is that growing? That could be misleading.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of math on that recently of, what do you have to sell in order to just maintain the number? And at some of the, higher end of the industry averages, it's quite intimidating of, what retail traffic you have to generate just to maintain. And so I think that, we're changing our perspective on that quite a bit.
Henry, I'll have one question for you, one question for Shannon. What's great about this gathering tonight is you have two sides of the business today. We've got finance, we've got marketing. Often they're at complete opposite ends of the spectrum in what they're wanting to track. So Henry, what's something a non-CFO, pretty much anyone else in the business, maybe doesn't understand about tracking the success of a new initiative or a new program?
I think, as you made the point about like labor versus the amount of plans sold and the amount of net plan growth, if you can look at consistent revenue at a car wash for 3 months, and you just see that dollar amount covering all of your expenses and getting you to the profitability that you want to, then that's really what you're going for. And you should simplify what you're focused upon in terms of the number of plans or the product mix, or really focusing on the bottom line there. Because at the end of the day, getting a car wash to 6 figures per month, more than that, is ultimately what we're trying to do. Not looking at the business from what's coming out of your pocket every day, but more so, how am I building it and then maintaining it for a longer period of time would be a longer term way of success that I think people often forget. And a lot of times when we've done acquisitions that haven't been as membership driven, they're really focused on, hey, this is the amount of cars I'm going to wash this day. This is the minimum amount of people that I can have there to do so. And then I'm going to cut that labor when the weather's poor. And then I might have a little bit more labor when the weather's there. They could have built their businesses up quite a bit over that time period and probably sold them for more money.
Shannon, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum here. What might a CFO or someone on the finance side not understand from your perspective about marketing?
That not every single car count on the general sales report can be attributed back to a marketing dollar spent, which if I could do that, I would. That would be fantastic. So I think that for us, obviously it's all about retail traffic, because that's what we call our pond that we're fishing out of for our future members and for creating that relationship. It's infinitely frustrating not knowing exactly where every single one of those people are coming from. And so that has been the tough conversations I've had with finance, right? When we're, doing budget versus actuals and looking at all that. I would also say great conversations that we've had working together, like joint task force style, have been, what are we willing to spend to get a club? And really digging into that number and arriving at something that we feel comfortable based on our average lifetime of, okay, this is the number that makes sense. So let's start to try to look at the marketing budgets in that sense. So we're actually willing to invest more than we were previously because we did the math together of, okay, like this is what they're going to be worth over their lifetime. What would you spend to get that? I mean, I love working with our finance team. They've taught me a lot as a marketer. I think that sometimes marketers are afraid of getting into the financials of it and the actual revenue. So it's really important.
And I think like they kind of simplify like, okay, I have to spend like this ad dollar or whatever it may be, but it's probably more so like, hey, if I've got somebody who's 6 months in, they cancel. Why don't I offer them 50% off for the next couple months? And that keeps them ideally for several months beyond that. And if you can see that data, that's a very worthwhile spend. And we don't always look that way. We just think, okay, we lost that one, we're gonna go sell another one. It's a lot harder to do.
Yes. And for us, we're looking at rolling out a much more robust program over the first year of someone's lifetime, where we might be mailing them something or we might be giving them other free services, since we do offer more than just exterior car washes at our locations. And so it's putting the cost value on those things as well. And, is that going to result in a 3-year club versus a 6-month club? And to your point.
Fantastic. Moving on to retail now. When we look back at the last year and a half or so, and the last year, retail is kind of taking a hit, and for a lot of groups, maybe not all. What are you doing to deal with a decrease in retail traffic?
We are not accepting that reality is the honest truth is right. Yes. I think that we've argued a lot about what is the reason, what is the factor. There's so many: economy, more competition in the area. For us, the worst weather record year ever in South Florida. And so you can't ignore those things, but you also can't use them as excuses. So we've just had to really get creative and I think understanding and digging into the numbers of, we know that we need more retail, but more retail doesn't help us set a goal to retail. So understanding exactly what do we need in order to hit the goals that we've set, and adjusting budgets for weather, and not just saying like, oh, we'll make it up next month, or this is magically going to get better. It's no, we got to figure out this business with the worst weather possible and make it work with the worst weather possible. So we've been really focused on retail. I would say from a marketing perspective, just understanding education, that's the long-term play with retail, because there's so many people in South Florida that just will never wash their car. They believe the rain does. And those are the long-term people that we got to start educating the marketplace. And then what's really easy about educated retail that our competitors have been educating, we can maybe do some things to go after that. It's something that we're still figuring out, but I think that we've, supplemented our strategy with a lot of very specific, targeted, geo-related tactics in order to boost retail. And
Shannon, Mint Eco has a number of kind of ancillary services. Does that play into targeting retail customers?
It does. I would say it definitely differentiates us. It also makes our club more attractive, and we do have some stickier club members. We've started to survey and quantify that a little bit more. And so, yes, that is an advantage for us. However, it does not necessarily help with weather. But, one of the things that we're looking at, can we schedule appointments and fill our books no matter what the weather is, things like that. So, and attract leads for future members through the back door of detailing business and things like that.
Henry, Whitewater has done such an amazing job on the membership side of the business. I'm curious to know, has Whitewater spent any time thinking about driving loyalty for retail customers?
Absolutely. I think we will roll something out early this year, really trying to get engagement with both retail and members to either bring Whitewater awareness to others or just benefit them for having been loyal to us, either from the number of washes that they've used or how long they've been a member. And so, historically, there hasn't been technology to do so. I think Rinsed is working on ways to do that with us, and we're starting to figure out ways that we can do it in a cost-effective manner without having to build out apps and having to do things that are kind of unnatural for the business.
Shannon, you kind of mentioned earlier the importance of educating the customer. Do you mind talking a little bit more about, and Henry, we spoke about this as well, how are you educating the customers on new wash plans. You have successfully rolled out a new wash plan
We did.
at Mint Eco.
Yes.
Do you mind walking us through what that process was like?
It was very involved. So we really take an omni-channel approach through everything that we do. We also have higher labor in our business model. We do not have pay gates. We do not have XPTs. We have human beings with tablets, Chick-fil-A style, who are out there. They're our biggest defense and offense that we have. So they are highly trained, highly educated staff members. So anytime we roll out a campaign, we have very copious notes, training videos, resources that we're giving them. So they're our kind of front line with that. We also have extensive signage, collateral. I mean, we launched graphene and ceramic and Rain-X all at once in a just absolute amazing package that we call the Mac Daddy. Can't get better than that. And so we had never, kind of given into, I'm not going to call it a gimmick because we don't believe it's a gimmick, but given into those gimmicks previously, we just shied away from those as a brand. But we did some extensive testing, decided this really is better. And we did the math and we said this is going to be way better from a mix perspective and a revenue perspective. And so we launched that. Education was honestly top priority because we didn't want to look like we were just launching something to get more money out of our customers. We were really scared of that. We've been very careful with our brand. We pride ourselves on challenging everything and kind of debunking the myths around car wash and telling you the truth. And so we created all these resources, whole new collateral pieces that showed the layers on the car and the science behind it. We interviewed the lead scientist at NCS and did a podcast kind of brief with him about literally the science. I know more about chemistry and graphene than I ever thought I would know as a marketer. And so then we took that, we wrote blogs, we wrote landing pages, we made videos, we did whole slideshows for our lobby. So I'm telling you, this campaign was probably like a 30-page deck that we rolled out across multiple elements, including the gates, in our member lanes. We hit every single element that we possibly could. And we're still in the middle of the campaign. It's not just done because it's a month ago. I mean, we're still rolling out education. So it's a long-term play. The best way to educate people is to get them to try it. So we had a very aggressive trial campaign. I'm pleased to say that we hit our 90-day goal in less than 20 days.
Wow, that's amazing.
And we're actually halfway to our year-end 2025 goal as of yesterday. So way more successful than we thought it was going to be. And I think that I have to give credit to our on-site team for just executing the campaign really well because, Marie and I, my right hand, we work really hard to create a really great plan and a think tank. And then we put together the resources, but we're not on the site. We're not talking to the customer. So it's been really cool to see the team come together and hit the goal, which is great.
That's incredible. Henry, you've spoken in the past about the emphasis Whitewater's placed on training and educating the customer in the driveway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we try to do is simplify the value proposition that we have. So 2 things. The first is that, our basic car wash should be a great car wash and get your car clean. But the additions that we have should also be valuable to the customer from them understanding what their needs are, i.e. if they'd like to have their wheels cleaned, we have a package for that. If they want to have their tires shine, we have a slightly more expensive package for that. And then if they want the Mac Daddy, we've got the ceramic package as well, which stepped over our hot wax package, which was kind of the ceramic of 4 or 5 years ago. But I think the other thing is people mess around with their pricing a lot and try to find different ways to get people, into higher price plans or whatever it may be. So we just simplified it and said, every one of our memberships, you save money by washing twice a month. So everything's priced at less than twice a single wash per month. And that's been a very simple way for our staff to help educate the customers on the value of membership.
Does that possibly mean increasing the price of a retail wash to make that second wash reach
More
that value
creative?
level? Yeah.
Honestly, not right now. I think we'd like to just continue to build the membership base and focus upon bringing more people into it and putting them into the right plans, because typically what we've found is that we can keep that churn rate industry lows, I would say, without a lot of pushing people into a higher price plan or pushing them towards membership when they weren't necessarily ready to buy one, and keep those lifetime values, in the several hundreds of dollars. So that way it's worth the sale at the outset.
There's so many pricing strategies in car wash. At Rinse, we speak with hundreds, if not thousands of locations every year. And it seems like, nearly every wash has some form of pricing or promotion that works for them. Are there any pricing strategies that you found that have not been successful?
What we have seen is that very high price memberships, and to me, very high prices, maybe it's got and this may be depending on where you are, but $50+ a month for an express car wash membership is difficult unless either the customer's already used to that from what your pricing has always been or the services that you provide. But the bulk of the big express operators right now are keeping their pricing in kind of that $20 to $45 range per month. And I think that's a good price point for people. So being super expensive, trying to jam too many plans into a menu that where, you might not necessarily see a lot of people adopt like the middle three if you had 5 and you really get that barbell effect, or you may just get people to the lower end because you confuse them. Those would be the two that I've seen that have not worked that well.
I just don't think we're old enough to have tried things that haven't or have blatantly just been terrible. I would say the thing that we probably went too aggressive on our grand opening promotion. We saw very abnormal churn for us on that. So that would maybe be the closest answer to that question. I'll tell you, we've been so careful with our pricing strategy. We, from the start, said we want to be at or below market until we hit a certain number of locations, and then we can, play the price game with the dominant strategy of we're saturated. There is no other real option for people. We've done 2 price increases now and not seen a negative impact to the business. We've done that methodically where we'll raise club one year, retail the other. So we never do both at the same time. We have raised prices on our other services. I would say that's been a little bit more sensitive than the wash services, especially at locations that offer free vacuums. People would, at a certain point it tips over and then they'll just do it themselves. So I don't know if that's helpful, but different life cycle. Yeah. Less of a test group,
And as a marketer, Shannon, what role does discounting play in the marketing efforts that you've seen be successful?
We view discounting and pricing as a part of our brand strategy. So we actually have taken the stance 0 discounts. We do not discount. We will do free, but we kind of, I don't want to say luxury because we're not a priced luxury brand, but I call us luxury adjacent in the look and feel. So we've been really careful not to do discounts, especially since that has been a very strong play from our competition in the marketplace. We want to look different. So we've done First Wash Free. I mean, that's kind of our standard evergreen campaign that we run right now, which is great because the whole goal anyways is to get them on site to try it. We'll do follow-up campaigns, first month free. So we've just been really careful. We don't love how it looks in the financials either with the discounts. So we've, taken the stance to strike that at the moment. We also do offer a discount on all of our other services if you're a club member. So that's kind of the discount that we offer is our ancillary services are priced very attractively for our members. So that also is a selling point for our club.
Has Whitewater approached discounting kind of the same way?
We've learned that there are certain times of the year where it just makes sense to have a promotion. And so we'll do company-wide efforts to help build up the membership base and really help the team build their compensation, because it's important for if Whitewater's having success that the team does as well. And they really rally behind that. But one thing that we've been doing recently is actually giving the team, like the store level management, the opportunity to say, hey, I'd like to run a 2-day promo for a weekend and the weather is going to be great and we're ready to execute upon it. And that's been really successful for us over the last couple of months here, letting these guys and girls kind of choose their own adventure. And I would say 85% of them have been pretty successful. Yeah.
Pretty good percentage.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I do just have one last question here for Henry. We went through a period of time a couple years ago when acquisitions was a very hot topic, and things have cooled down a little bit, but Whitewater has grown through greenfield and acquisitions. I wonder if you'd mind shedding some light on, as an acquirer, what would a 1 to 3 location chain that maybe isn't thinking about selling today, but it's on the roadmap potentially one day, what do you look for in a car wash as an acquirer?
So I think there's 2 types of acquisitions that we would look for. The first, which is the easier purchase, and especially somebody who's got multiple locations because they've been working hard on building their business, is a clean business that we can see that the staff who are at the location would be a great fit within the Whitewater family. There's not going to be a lot of I'll call it adversarial situations in which they come into the way that we operate and there's a kind of long training ground. And so the ownership has to set that up. It can't just be the store team. So, the store's got to be in good shape, equipment's maintained. They may or may not have a huge membership base, but they are focused on kind of running a profitable and strong revenue business, and they don't necessarily have a bloated cost structure, but they also don't bare bones run the business either, because that's how you get to the kind of under repaired type businesses. And then ideally, you've got somebody within that acquisition who kind of wants to grow with a bigger company, because typically they can be the champion for the new owner. And we've done really well bringing people onto our team that way. So that's kind of, plan A. Plan B is great locations that maybe the operations just never kind of came to fruition, but the bones are there of something good. And so we would look at those sort of acquisitions as well, because if the sites make sense from a greenfield perspective, we would have done them if they were greenfields, there's value there as well. So there is a real estate component to this in which we'd say we can go and staff this location with our staff, or we can help develop some of the existing team to kind of run it the way that we need it to, as long as it's a good location and good shape.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. All right. So that is our kind of panel portion. We do have a couple minutes left. If anyone has any questions they'd like to ask Shannon and Henry while they're up here. Yes.
Where do you see the car wash industry going in the next couple of years?
And the question was, where do you see the car wash industry going in the next couple of years?
I definitely see already brand is going to become a lot more important than it has been. We've already kind of been on that trend, but I think that the consumer is getting smarter. This is an industry and a space that they weren't educated in the past, and they are going to challenge you. So what happens when any market becomes saturated? The consumer becomes the one at the advantage. They have choice. And so we're going to see pricing become, I think, a lot more important and a lot more competitive. And there will be people who will have to drop price to compete. We're taking the stance that we're instead investing in the brand and the infrastructure and differentiation so that we won't have to play the pricing game. We don't want to play that game. And so I think that from a local marketing perspective, that's, heavy on our minds, is just building a brand that's going to be able to withstand that saturation point. Because I don't think we still know exactly how many car washes equals a market saturation or an oversaturation kind of tipping point. We're trying to avoid that before we get there.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And then the other thing that I'd say is, there's the biggest player in the space still only has 3% market share. It makes a lot of sense for there to be consolidation, especially at the mid-levels. So the stores that are 10 to 100, you'll probably see a lot of merger activity. But I think what makes that interesting is then those teams do have to have kind of the same brand identity and the same quality. And really, you've got to start to get that experience across the multiple markets that you'll be in. And I agree with you that folks are going to have to discount if they're not the high quality operator and they're just trying to be the $3 car wash or whoever it may be. And some of those will survive. And then you may see, that kind of bottom 10% start to shut down. But there's going to be a lot of growth still in the space because of the overall kind of retail and housing growth that we have here in the U.S. Every retail center you see pop up these days seems to have a car wash pad on it for sale.
Thank you.
Another question.
Yeah.
So kind of twofold question. So you're talking even about like car wash companies merging together or acquisitions, or even what you're doing in your companies. What are you doing to keep your employees there and loyal and actually motivated?
And the question is, with all of these mergers and acquisitions happening, what are some strategies we can put in place to keep and retain those employees that we acquire?
I think for us, we pay well. I wouldn't say that we pay a lot more than our local competition. We pay very fairly. I think what we're seeing in terms of retaining and attracting top talent is giving them a growth plan, a development plan. I think that matters more to people than people realize, especially when you're attracting top talent to car washing. It's not the sexiest industry yet for people to join. It's getting there. But I think that, we really are a people-dependent business, even with all the automation. You really have to have really competent managers running these locations, especially if you're trying to do something experiential like we are. You have to have someone who knows the importance of people and can develop that culture. And so for us, none of the GMs that we have today are here for a one location opportunity. They're all looking at becoming area managers, regional managers in the future, potentially moving into headquarters someday. They're on a career track. And so that just changed the conversations when we hired them in the first place. So I think just understanding what is our goal as a company and then hiring people for the right fit has been the way that we've retained people, because we hired the right people in the first place.
Yeah, and a couple things I'll add to that are make it a good place to work, i.e. management team doesn't have to work 70, 80 hours a week. Set up the infrastructure beforehand so that way the management team isn't performing tons of things on facilities, on accounting, on HR. So if you have the support staff for the team and can keep them on a structured, simplified schedule, it makes it a much more pleasurable place to work, especially when you're attracting people from other industries that may have pretty bad work-life balance, i.e. restaurant, some of the retailers, that sort of stuff.
So the second part is, with the industry evolving and changing and a lot of competition coming in, what are you doing to retain your customers?
The question is, with so much competition coming into the market, what are we doing to retain our customers?
For us, it's a little bit of an easier conversation because we have built something that is very different than the nearest competitor. The additional services that we offer helps with that. I think for us, from the beginning, we've said that we're creating a movement. And so we've created all of our branding and messaging and interaction with our customers around this. You're a part of something different and special, get in early and then grow with us mentality. We see it, the more locations that we open, the easier it's getting when you open them. There's an existing population that's waiting for us to open a location near them, which is really cool. And they're kind of telling us exactly where they want us to open a new location next. I think that the biggest thing we see is you just have to deliver consistent results. Like, you cannot be on one day, off another. You get a little bit of forgiveness from your members, right? They're like, okay, I'll go through again or something like that. But you don't really get third chances. You might get a second chance, you don't get third chances. So I think car quality, continuing to offer new things, innovation, listening to their feedback, getting them involved in giving the feedback has been really good for us. At least at this point in our life cycle, we have a long way to go to get to 100 over here. But.
107.
This guy is counting.
The last thing that you said for us is the same. If we've had a lot of competition come in around one of ours, if we were on our game consistently, it didn't hurt us much. But if we struggled operationally or struggled from a facilities perspective, we did see revenue drop off. So we've had cases of both of those happen in our business. So consistency and making sure that they don't have a reason to leave is really the thing that I would say has helped us in the competitive landscape.
Question for Shannon. You mentioned educating consumers on the benefits and science behind car washing. For operators who aren't doing that yet, what do you think is like the one fact that they could maybe start with their consumer base to educate them on that more?
That's a great question. So the fact that I would focus on and that we've been talking a lot about is not scare tactics, but kind of what is the environment really doing to your car? Like, what is the reality of what's happening to your car if you're not washing? And so kind of teaching people that it's like getting a sunburn in South Florida is a really good analogy for us, right? You got to put sunscreen on at the beach, otherwise you're going to end up in the ER with sunstroke. So for us, kind of giving some of those more powerful visuals and analogies, I think was a very natural place for us to start because the weather is such an obvious factor here. Hopefully that helps somebody. But I think just starting very simple and you can build on that. That's a foundational building block. So.
And then question for Henry. You mentioned loyalty for members. Can you give an example of what that would look like, and why would Whitewater have a loyalty program for members?
What would you do to ensure you're driving loyalty for members?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you can do is just reward them for their allegiance. So if that is either an upgrade or a free month for being a member after a certain period of time, you wouldn't do it in the first month, but say they were with you for 6 to 12 months, there's no reason why you can't earn kind of just like a coffee card or that sort of thing, a 13-month free or something like that. And then I think the second thing, which is probably even more of a benefit to us, is like tell somebody about it. Here's a free wash to give somebody else. And I think that's how you'll build more of that brand identity and new customers being attracted to the company.
All right. This is our second Rinsed Connect event. We're so grateful for everyone who made it out here today in Jacksonville. Henry and Shannon, thank you so much for taking the time. We've learned a lot, and we can't wait till the next Connect event to gather again. Thank you.